Like Sigmund Freud, some artists have thought that the real truth lies in hallucinations. Paul Gauguin said, "Art is an abstraction. Seek it in nature by dreaming in the presence of it." But many painters, in describing the qualities that mark a good artist, have singled out the ability to observe as being especially important. The concept is that an artist must be self-trained to observe, to see a white flower and not see white, but pale yellow and blues and lavenders. The renowned Art Students League instructor Frank Dumont said, "I'm not only trying to teach you to paint, but also to see." 100 years ago, the American artist James Whistler would go out onto the Chelsea Embankment in southwest London with a friend. He would observe the area intently, then turn around and recite what he had observed. If his friend told him of an error, Whistler would again gaze at the scene until, in his words, he had learnt it by heart. In her painting today, Margaret Holland Sargent will be doing what Whistler and others have strongly advocated, intensely observing the colors in a still life and then matching them with colors mixed on the palette.
Today we're going to explore color. There are three kinds of color: local color, which is the basic color of an object; reflected color, which is the light reflected from one object into another; and translucent color, which is the color that goes through an object, such as the petal of a flower. I'm going to demonstrate a floral arrangement for you today, but first, let's look at the palette. This chart shows the colors on our palette. There are 14 hued colors. Hue is the name of a color, like in the color wheel, red, yellow, and green. On the left is alizarin crimson. The other colors in this row are all cadmium barium colors: red deep, red medium, red light, orange deep, orange, yellow deep, yellow medium, and yellow light. This orange is the color put out by most manufacturers of oil paint. This is Grumbacher's orange. It has a little more red in it. Cerulean blue is the lightest of the three blues. There's cobalt blue and ultramarine blue, the darkest blue. Phthalo green and viridian complete the hued colors on our palette. There are 8 neutrals. A neutral is a color completely lacking in hue, such as red, blue, or yellow. We have ivory black, permalba white, and 6 shades of gray from number 3 through number 8. Liquitex has saved us a lot of time by manufacturing these 6 shades of gray in a series. You'll notice that number 3 is the same value or lightness and darkness as red deep, as does number 4 to red medium. In the top range, yellow deep and orange have the same value as gray number 7. In summary, these grays are lined up with the other colors on our palette in terms of their value. One example of how to use these grays is to make an object seem round. For instance, if you can visualize this blob of red as being an apple, you could take a touch of this same value gray, number 3, mix it with a little of the red and apply it to the edge, and it will make that apple seem to just go away from the eye. Cerulean blue is just about the same value as gray number 3. The other 2 blues and the 2 greens, as well as alizarin crimson, are all darker in value than number 3. With just the paints on this palette, I'll be able to mix any color I need. Now, let's go take a look at the lighting setup. This is a 150 watt parabolic reflector spotlight that I use to illuminate the arrangement. Then I have a 150 watt floodlight over my easel. It lights the easel and the palette where I mix my paints. Now over both these lights, I use this daylight blue filter. You can buy them in most photo supply stores. It helps convert the tungsten light to daylight, eliminating the reds and the yellows to give you a more natural effect. Here's our arrangement. I've taken the largest flower and put it fairly low in the arrangement, because if you had a big one up here, it would have a tendency to be top heavy. The smaller ones at the top make a better balance. The brightest color, which are these love lilies, I put in the center to keep the interest there, and spaced the yellows sort of in a nice line this way. The local color that I mentioned before, the general color, is that color that gets the direct light. Would be this part of the petal or this part of the petals of this flower here, this daisy getting the full light. The reflected color would be color like from a yellow flower reflecting back into the shadow side of another flower, in this case the China mum. Translucent color, the light going through a leaf comes out on the other side to be a nice little spot of brighter color than the actual local color. Before I start my sketch, I'll explain that several days ago I toned my canvas. This is a 16 by 22 canvas, and I just used a little of my neutral gray number 5 mixed with a little cadmium red light, and very loosely brushed it on with a little paint thinner, so that you have something to work from that's a sort of a medium tone, and it's warm, so that when you look at your still life or your other arrangement, you have a balance of values. It makes it easier for the beginning student. Now we'll start our sketch. Pick out a number 6 bristle. Use about a number 4 neutral. We have to make the placement. I think I'll put this base a little off center. Be about there. Now I'm going to lower that a little bit. For the sketching, you want to keep fairly loose and not commit yourself immediately. See the things you want to bring out. Now that mum is here, these flowers go off to that edge. The lilies you want to have come in about here. I think the top of that container should go a little lower than I had it. Daisies. When you're toning a canvas, sometimes at the end of the day you have just a little pile of paint, different colors. You could mix them all together and come out with sort of a neutral, mid-value, and it makes a great combination for toning the canvas that you'll be using several days from then. You have to make sure the paint is completely dry so that it doesn't work in with the fresh paint that you're using. have a cast shadow right here in the edge of the drape where it hits the table. It's very soft, comes right in about there. I think we have our major guidelines, so we should start mixing the colors for the background, which is the largest mass. That background color looks like a shade of Viridian to me. We'll mix a basic background color. Viridian itself is a little bit dark value, and it's a little grayer, so I'm picking up some number 3 of my neutral, mixing it in. That makes a nice, rich color, but it's a little bit on the blue side, so we'll warm it up by touching a little yellow medium in there and see what that will do. All right, we take our large bristle brush, number 18, and we pick up some of that basic background color. You can see now why I wasn't so particular with my sketch, because I'm going to go over that pretty much with the background color. As I drop down, I put my brush into the pile of paint on the right to which I added the orange deep. That's my third variation. And then toward the center, in the top, I use the second variation. And I'm going to even work a little bit of that as it peeks through some of these flowers. And on the left, the first variation that I mixed. Not being too careful to keep all that red out the toning color, because it gives kind of an interesting life to the painting. I may work some in more later if I find it distracting. Oh, by the way, I'm using the Copal painting medium too, to thin my paints just a little. I may go back when I restate the areas. I'll probably go back and put a thicker coat, but at the moment I'm happy just to get the background masked in. Now I'm going to mix some colors for the tabletop. Now this is still the basic background color, and I put a drop of white in that. I think that should bring it up in value for the tabletop, and then I'll have to add a little more yellow. Let me try yellow deep. I think that will give me the richness that I need to compensate for that extra white. I hope that that value will work. I think that needs a little more yellow. Okay, I have my variations mixed, and I'm using a number 12 filbert to mass in that tabletop. It's very close to the value of that backdrop, which makes it nice in a way, then you don't have that hard edge to work with where the backdrop meets the tabletop. Again, I'm going to let a little of that red tone show through, at least for now. This is my the variation where I used a little bit of the orange deep. I realize this looks like very sloppy painting, but the looser you can stay at this point, the better. For that cast shadow, I'm going to try a little Viridian with a touch of phthalo. It's very dark at the base of the... All right, we'll take some of that mixture with a new brush and just lay it right in where that shadow is cast by our container, flower container. Now, that appears to me to be a little light and a little bright, so I'm going to drop some black in my mixture and see if that won't help. Yes, I think I like that better. The shadow starts off with a fairly sharp edge at the base and then goes out, feathers out to a softer edge the further away it gets from the object. I'm going to take some of the same shadow mixture and work it up on the canvas where the flowers are casting their shadow on the background, and the ferns shadows occur there. Now over here on the left, there's a fold in the drape, and I'm going to work a little of that dark color here. I'm going to work a little of this shadow up in the corner where it's getting very little of that light. And there are deep darks in the base of this vase of flowers. This is an accent color we're adding here. Now they occur all the way through. Bring a little bit into that corner. This area is getting... Okay, we'll go work down here a little bit and get this area where it's getting the fold from the back drape too. Just give it a little variation. Okay, I think we should mix our colors for the vase. For the light side of that vase, I'm going to use neutral gray number 8, value 8, a little yellow deep, just a touch to warm it up. For the shadow side of that vase, I'm going to take a number 4 gray and mix in a drop of orange. Generally, shadow is indoors in this situation is around value 5, but since I'm adding lighter value color to the neutral, I'll go a little darker than the neutral I want. And the lighter color will bring it up to about a 5. All right, let's start laying those in. General light. That might be a little lighter than I want. I think I'll drop a little neutral 5 in there. Modify that as I go along. change to another brush, 8 filbert this time, and see if I guessed a little better on that shadow color. Again, trying to keep those edges soft. I'll go back and forth. Brushes, just go over a tiny bit. There. For the China Mum, I will take some value 8, just a touch of yellow deep. That'll be my general light. For halftone, I'm going to go with 7 and just a drop of orange. That's where the light goes into shadow. And then on the shadow side, farthest from the light, number 5, gray, and a yellow deep, because it's getting a little greenish feeling from the leaves and the background. And that yellow with the dark gray gives that look. All right, let's put those on the canvas. Starting with the shadow side of that mum, I'm going to treat it like a solid object to begin with. It is pretty solid. We'll start there and get the shadow pattern just like it's a ball. Leave the edges feathered and soft. There's a little bit of shadow coming in this area here where the petals come up. Now the halftone takes place right around in here where it goes from light to shadow, and there's a lot of nice translucent light in there and reflected light. We'll get back to that later, but massing in the light side. Going to take a little more yellow deep and take that down. It seems a little light to me, so I'll take it down because we'll need to get a highlight on those petals, and if we go too light in the general light, then the highlights won't show up. This comes around and picks up a little in the halftone, right about here. Get a few of those halftones catching petals. All right, well, while I'm at the mum, I think I'm going to add a few colors. Those nice, they're more golden quality. Now I'm going to mix a little yellow medium with the halftone. Put them right in here. That's where, even though it's a white mum, when the light comes through the leaves, it just intensifies that color and makes it lovely creamy color. We see it up in the top. And I've mixed a little bit of orange with my shadow color. We'll just lay that in there. Just a touch of brighter orange where it catches the light. And in the shadow side, it's trying a little orange deep right about in here. Gets that lovely translucent look. Okay, for the light side of those ferns and leaves, I'm going to try a number 5 gray with a touch of yellow light. That makes a nice light, colorful green. You can't get it as colorful as the translucent green, which is the green that comes through the leaf. So the gray will tone it down enough, I think, to be just right for the light side. I'll put a little of that aside, and for the shadow side, it's really very dark. I'm just going to use a bit of black and put a little yellow medium. Let's try yellow medium with that. Yellow medium will bring it up in value and also turn that nice rich green. Could use a little more. There we go. For the shadow side of those ferns and leaves. All right, let's get those blocked in. Now we take that shadow mixture and just go in here and find some shapes. Keep it nice and loose. Indicate where those darker portions of the fern go. I see one curling down there. One curling around this mum. And they're curling all through here. There's one back of a fern coming right there. See some stems in these flowers. Stems coming in here. Stems. Now we'll change brushes and go from a 6 to a 4. See, there's a lovely fern coming in here. Just skip around and mix those 2 shades of green as you need to get slight variations. A lot of this will be covered up with flowers later, but it's good to have a variation. Where this leaf is getting some translucent light, I'm using my phthalo, which is the nice brilliant green in your palette. Just dipping it in and adding it where that occurs. Okay, we have those colors. Let's go on and mix some of the rest of the flowers. For the light side of those lovely lavender chrysanthemums, I'm using a number 6 gray, and I'm adding a touch of alizarin crimson to that. Keep adding enough of the crimson till you reach the shade you like. This will be the light tips. Some of the petals are turning, we're getting the underside, and that's a darker look. So let's, for the darker side, let's mix alizarin with some number 3 gray. That will get us the right value for that deep side of the mums that are in shadow. And there's something in between that's getting direct light. Let's try a combination of alizarin and some of each of the others and see if we can. A little more alizarin. Okay, we'll try those and see how that works. For the mums, we're going to just block in that whole dark area as though it were a solid mass. We're not going to worry about individual petals yet. Underneath this group here, along there, and there's one little flower that comes in here. Just be ruthless with the brush and mix a little bit of that brighter color in with the shadow. Sort of a transition here. These petals are so raggedy anyway that handling the brush loosely almost solve your problem there. Now I'm dipping still into that bright color. Into that mixture that I had that was the middle mixture, I'm adding a little more alizarin. I find I need a brighter statement than I had. Just pure alizarin with my second mixture. Now I'll go to the top, the first color that I mixed, and give just the tips of these where the light catches. Those delicate little petals in the middle. And as I go across away from the light, I'm mixing a little of the darker color in my brush. So we get that progression following right across. And in the one that's in shadow, I'm mixing mostly shadow color with that light to make those tips stand out there. Okay, the general light of those lilies, I'm going to go to orange deep and orange. They are a lovely bright orange color. They're not, well, they're pretty, almost as bright as a regular orange, but I think I'll tone them down just a tad with a drop of white. This is the general light. Translucent color, which is the brightest, we see on the underside of those leaves. I'm going to go with a red light and an orange deep, and I will leave that pretty pure. For the shadow, I'm going to go with a number 5 gray, some orange deep, and red light. Mix all those together. I'm going to start with the shadow side of these lilies. And they're an intricate shape, so I'm going to try to find a basic pattern for them and make it fairly solid. And I'll cut in when necessary with the background color, greens and so forth. As I'm going along, I'm adding a little more red light to that shadow mixture. So I found it wasn't quite as colorful on the canvas as it seemed to be on the palette. Those lilies are gorgeous. The florist said they were called love lilies, but most people think of them as tiger lilies, I think. I've added a little white to that light mixture for the light side of some of these petals. I'm using two brushes here, one with the darker color and one with the lighter color, so that it saves time having to wash a brush if you just use the two. Now on the spot mixing, I'm trying to get that, there we go, that's darker. I went back down to number 4 gray with my red light. That seems to give me the depth in here that I was lacking before. It's amazing how dark you have to go sometimes when you think it's going to be way too dark. I'm even going down to 3 with my red light and see if that won't give the depth I need. This petal coming around here. It seems so dark on the palette, and yet it isn't when you get it up to the canvas. And be very daring and put a little red medium in that. See if that doesn't give that richness. Because of the light coming through, there's that translucent and reflected light combined in here. Look at that. Oh, that's a nice rich one. I used cadmium red medium and red light together with just a little bit of gray number 3 to get that. Squinting down your eyes helps a lot to get the shapes. Now I'm using that color that I mixed for the very brightest, the translucent color is coming right in here. I see a little bit on this leaf, or that petal. Notice then, this one is getting some light, then going right into the dark. Okay, I'm adding a little lighter mixture from my light for the highlights on a couple of these leaves, petals. All right, we'll go back to those later, but right now we should skip on and mass in the rest of the flowers. So why don't we mix the colors for the yellow daisies. For the daisies and the light, we're going to just use pure yellow light, and I'm going to mix a shadow color for the shadow side from number 5 and yellow medium. See what we can get here that will approximate that nice shadow side. They're still yellow, but I think I'll add a little yellow deep to that. I'll warm it up even more. So we have that basic mixture for the shadow side. Now for the button mums, they're a little bit down the scale, or rather up the scale, so they'd be the general light would be yellow deep, and for the shadow side, let's try a number 4 neutral with an orange. So we have the 2 shadow mixtures, and then we can use the pure cadmium colors for the light side. see if that will work. That might be dark, but let's try it. Okay, let's see if we can get those last flowers massed in. The little bitty mums at the top are really pretty solid and round. So I'm putting in that shadow color, which is not too bad. We'll just start with that, and we can add a little reflected light as we go along. And shift brushes. Grab the yellow medium, I think is going to be right. Let's just take a look and see. Maybe a mixture of yellow medium and yellow deep is better, because they have a rich, that's better. They have a rich color. They have a nice texture too. The ones further from me seem to have more orange, but then that's sort of a logical progression too. So I'll add a little more of the yellow deep and maybe a touch of orange to those that are farther away. Here's one. Close. You should train your eye to see accurately and get spaces in the right, get your object in the right place. But one nice thing about florals is you can be a little bit freer. The flowers will never complain. They're not just properly placed. Oh, I'm adding, in the halftone area, I'm adding orange and orange deep as the color goes into that shadow. Let's see a little tick of that flower in here. And at the light side that's nearest to the light, I'm going to use that yellow medium with just a touch of white to lighten it, and that'll be the highlight on those flowers. The light hits strongest right there on that one, right about here, here. I'm going to make those shadows a little richer. I'm going to try a little red light in with the shadow side, or a little more orange deep, not quite so much gray. Keep the value down, but keep the color. That's it. Okay, now cooking. They have a little dark underside. Let's see here. I left out a flower too. This one comes from right here. Okay, I'm adding little stems there, and you'll notice that I just used the general shadow for these little button stems at the top. Let's block in the daisies. That general light comes in the bright spots, and the shadow, there's a translucent area right in here. A little bit of shadow there. You think of the flowers as one solid cylinder. You can just mass it in almost as a solid cylinder. And then go back and refine it. Before I do much more, I'm going to get that yellow center for that. Putting in the shadow side of those little buttons in the middle. Work on the petals a little more. Using my yellow light mixture with a touch of white and occasionally a touch of number 6 to bring it down to this shadow feeling in here. Train your eye to see where those colors have a slight change. Each petal should be slightly different from the others. You can repeat, say, on opposite sides of the flower every once in a while, but mix something slightly different with your brush. Get the color changes going. The problem with most flower paintings is that people don't change the color of those petals. I've got to make myself another center here. It's better. All right, now at this point I'm going to drop down and do the daisy under the mum. That one seems mostly in shadow, so we'll just mass it in that way to begin with and go back if we need to get more detail. You know, a great trick in flower painting is to have most of the flowers very loose and very little detail, with just one or two where you show all the petals and everything, and that way you can control the viewer's eye. They'll always look where there's more detail, and you can then have a real center of interest wherever you want to put it. I'm adding a little black and orange to get this deeper color. I know that sounds strange, but I'm having to do it to get dark enough on this flower. Now, where it goes into the light, It's sort of a greenish yellow because it's getting, somehow it's getting less direct light than the flowers above. So we'll just take it a little bit and make your petals uneven. Don't make them all circular, she says as she makes them all circular. Now there is a brighter center portion around these petals right in here. I'm going to work that in. Get a little bit going with the petals, but I think better than to paint each petal, I'm going to take some background color right from that spot. You know, we always save a little pile of the same mixture so that we can do this. Go back in and take a little of the background color and shape those leaves with the background. See how easy that is. The same on the other side. The other side is getting a deeper green, so you go into the accent green. Make those the shape of those petals. I think that's about all the detail I want in that particular flower. So I'm going to start with the daisies, and we'll work with the daisy right here underneath. And that, as you can see, is in shadow. So we'll use one of our neutral grays and go down to shadow value, as you know, is red, cadmium red light, number 5. That's where the shadow value usually begins in painting indoors like this. So we'll just try that, see how that looks. We can mask that in and add a little color later if we want to on that. Those petals go out a little bit further. Number 5. And right going away from us, it's getting some direct light. So I will use, it's not too bright, but let me try a number 7. See if that will do it. Oh yeah, it's plenty bright enough. But I think it's too cold, so I'm going to mix a little yellow medium in with it, just a touch. Yeah, that's perfect. It warms it up. And I'll go down to a 6 and put a little yellow deep for this petal that's curling around under here. You know, it doesn't pay to put on a color just because it's on your palette. Think through what you want to do and then put it on. Don't just reach down and grab the handiest color that's already there or that you've mixed for something else. Chances are it will not work. We have a little center. This daisy here. I'm going to do the same thing with my small brush. Pick up some of the green that's surrounding that daisy in this particular area. Work it into the petals. I'm really glad I saved all that paint now. And I put it over on another part of the palette in exactly the same relative position as the series that I mixed for the canvas, so that I can put my brush down in just the right spot. Then we have the daisies in the back and the daisies in the halfway down. So we'll get those, this little fellow is right about here. And using a gray number 7 mixed with a little bit of yellow deep for these petals. Then we'll go down to the number 6 with a little orange for the shadow side. Those petals curl into shadow. There's a nice bright little center right about here. For the highlights, I'm going to go up and use the number 8 with a little cadmium yellow right in there. Touch there. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I like to leave the flowers on the edge pretty loose, so I'm going to go up and paint the top daisy using my neutral number 6. And a little bit of 5 for the shadow side. Needs a touch of warmth. It's getting translucent light in there, and every time that happens, it warms up. Keep that in mind. When the petals are in the shadow side, do try to keep them fairly simple, not too much color variation. It's the light side where you want the color changes, not the shadow side, the light side. I see a stem there that I neglected to put in, so I will reach over and grab my stem color. At the same time, with that green or with the proper background green, I'm going in and refining some of these shapes on our little mums. Every time I get into finer detail, I go with a slightly smaller brush. I started out with an 18, and now I'm working with a 1, getting these little places defined where you want to indicate shapes. At this point, a lot of people should stop painting because the values are pretty well established. The painting is still loose. And when they get into trouble is when they carry on and get too picky a look. So I'm going to try to follow my own rule. I'm looking now at little refinements that I can make. Get these petals. You know that's a mum. Squint your eyes down so you can hardly see any light at all. Make sure those basic values are right and that you have the bright colors where you want. I think I'm going to pick up my bright brush grab some alizarin pure, see if that won't, yeah, that'll give me those little accents that I need up here. And alizarin with a touch of ultramarine for this back flower keeps that color rich, as you're not adding black, but it's still nice and dark. It gives it form. There's one back in here that has that color. So we're looking now at accents and highlights. I see a little bit of the side of the vase coming through the light back here. One thing that has been bothering me a little, and that's the overall balance of this painting. One good thing about oil painting, you can add and subtract very easily. All right, I took one of the little flowers and I just set it down here on the arrangement, and I'm going to sketch a little bit with the back of my brush about where I want that placed. And I think that'll just about take care of the balance problem that I felt I needed here. So I'll go to some of the shadow color and block in a few petals here and here. Get a nice dark center. And a shadow side of the center. Go darker. Make some brighter petals using my yellow light and a touch of white. Toning it down a little bit for the other petals. Each petal I paint, I'll use slightly different intensity. A little stem color. It's too light in value. I'm going to just mix a little background color with that, because it is not getting the same bright light. It's a little better. And there's a shadow side of that stem. Then there's the cast shadow on the table. There's a little accent cast underneath the flower holder container. And restate the accents in the center here. Okay, now let's look at the painting as a whole and find interesting shapes. Get some of the lily defined here. The centers of those lilies are really Oh, I'm mixing a little cadmium red light and red medium to get these brilliant centers that I see in these lilies. Just gorgeous. Luscious color. There's this beautiful stamen that curling up. They call that a pistil or a stamen. One or two more touches, and I think I'd better stop. I don't want to carry it so far that I'll be unhappy. Got to get this darker green against the flowers. I can shape those petals a little bit better. One little last stamen curling up from this lily. These tiger lilies are called tiger lilies probably because of these tiger-like spots that come along the petals. Be very subtle. You don't want to get too bright with them. I see I'm going to add these spots to the petals only on the light side, so that, and on one flower, so that the eye will go right there. That's going to be my center of interest. And with that, I'm going to throw down the brush. Floral arrangements are excellent for practice. You can light them so that translucent light comes through the petals and supplements the beautiful local color and the reflected color of the flowers. But you must practice to realize your full potential. So keep painting.